was going to do a long video on the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, but a lot of this has been covered already. This kid was put on trial for an entire year before his actual trial. For 1 full year, the news was that a white supremacist, white nationalist, shot 3 activists at a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. But what the actual news story is that this young man traveled across state lines to defend his father's community because the police were ordered by politicians to stand down. The fire department was ordered by politicians to stand down. And as in much of 2020, the lawless were given free rein to loot, burn, and destroy entire cities in order to express themselves. And this young man came along. He showed up at the scene and started scrubbing graffiti off of walls. This young man did not show up to murder anybody. In all 3 cases of the men he shot, it was in pure self-defense. This should never have gone to trial. But the prosecutor hoped to become a big Democrat star by destroying a Trump supporter when Donald Trump had nothing to do with this case. You can see in Washington, D.C. that the news media and the Democratic Party are working very hard to convince you that there is some vast conspiracy from the January 6th protest in Washington, D.C. The Biden Justice Department has issued indictments for Steve Bannon, a Trump advisor. You have to scroll down to the bottom of the article to see that this is all political. Biden's Justice Department has been turned entirely over to the services and needs of the Democratic Party. The January 6th committee issued subpoenas to Michael Flynn, a man who had his life destroyed by the Obama administration for daring to be hired as President Trump's national security advisor. If he's such a villain, why was he President Obama's national security advisor? Why is all this happening right now? Because the Washington Post just had to correct a 4-year-old set of stories on the Steele dossier. They had to delete huge chunks of these stories because they say they can now no longer assume the veracity of the Steele dossier. Because, thanks to the Durham indictments, we've learned that Hillary Clinton's campaign didn't simply pay Russians to be the middlemen on the Steele dossier. The Clinton campaign authored every accusation of the Steele dossier. It was completely fabricated by the Democratic Party. So democracy died in darkness, and the Washington Post doesn't care because mission accomplished, they got rid of Trump. But when you see these stories about all these indictments, it's because the order went out. Get that Steele dossier off of the headlines. And the order went out, destroy Kyle Rittenhouse, because only Democrats have the right to show up and protest. Your job, if you're not a Democrat protester, is to cower in fear at home. You're not supposed to show up like Kyle Rittenhouse. And what we're going to see, why his trial is so important, what we're seeing is if every town has 1,000 Kyle Rittenhouses showing up armed to defend their communities, we will never see another town burned to the ground by Antifa, BLM, or other Democrat groups approved and run and funded by the Democratic Party. Kyle Rittenhouse is not the exception. Kyle Rittenhouse needs to be the role model in all 50 states so that we can put a stop to the evil of the Democratic Party. We need to put a stop to everything the Democratic Party forces on our country. The Democratic Party wants our entire nation cowering in fear and hiding in our homes. We don't need to convict a boy like Kyle Rittenhouse. We need many more like him. Thank you.